Yet again, the police officers responsible for killing a human being have evaded accountability. And yet again, their apologists are rationalizing the government killing people at the same time they assure themselves they hate the government. In order to leave their contradictory worldview intact, these apologists must convince themselves the victim had it coming. In the case of Breonna Taylor, they claim her boyfriend was selling drugs. He wasn't, it was an ex-boyfriend. Or that she was somehow involved in the drug deals. And because the government has declared that illegal, read the same politicians some right-wingers claim to disdain made up some rules about what you're allowed to put in your own body. It may be sad, but she had it coming. They argue that because cops were legally serving a warrant, Kenneth Walker didn't have a right to protect himself and his property. It's the law, they insist. They blame collective politicians for the actions of individual cops who work for politicians and violently enforce their laws, and without whom these corrupt, power-hungry politicians would have no control. In doing so, these apologists not only insult the intelligence of police officers by suggesting they don't have enough brain cells to do anything but follow politicians' orders, but by citing these laws, which come from those megalomaniacal, untrustworthy politicians, they also side with the government, and in doing so, deny the basic human right to defend yourself and your property. They defy their own beloved right enshrined in the Constitution because some mortal humans put on funny costumes and wear badges and call themselves authority figures. Apologists do this as they simultaneously insist they need guns to protect themselves from the exact government they're defending. They completely disregard that the foundation of their collectivist national identity is disobedience and defying unjust laws while violently challenging authority. But it's different now because it's a republic, not a monarchy, right? I get it. You, the police apologists, believe the republic is legitimate and crafted to serve the people and maintain law and order. Never mind that since its inception, your precious republic has allowed and mandated grave injustices that are antithetical to freedom, slavery, censorship of anti-government speech, requiring people to return escaped slaves who, like the founders, broke the law for liberty, the slow encroachment of gun control, or the government's completely unconstitutional war on terror from undeclared wars to warrantless mass surveillance. Despite all these documented violations, you still insist the law is equivalent to morality and rationalize murder to defend your delusions. You demand law and order and call for more government when riots and violence inevitably break out in response to the government killing people. And while I will never defend stealing or destroying private property or harming innocent people, it is sadly laughable that you can't understand that the people you trust to enforce law and order repeatedly undermine it by chronically violating the supreme law of the land because they're just following orders from the politicians you loathe. If you really cared about law and order in your constitution, you'd be outraged that Breonna Taylor was killed without trial, even if she were guilty of any of the crimes armchair warriors claim she was. You'd understand that she had a right to due process, that people suspected of crimes more than anyone must be given a fair trial to ensure the government doesn't abuse its power. Even if the police you love insist she was breaking the law and you trust them without question, even when they refuse to release body camera footage of Duncan Lemp, who they killed in the middle of the night over possession of firearms. Instead, you'll sit on the internet defending mortal humans who hallucinate superhuman authority, the right to initiate violence, which only government is perceived to possess, and who in doing so broke into private property, were met with someone defending themselves, and in response killed a woman who did nothing to deserve a death sentence. The government you bow to already admitted it was wrong and forced taxpayers to pay the damages. You're ultimately simping not only for the enforcement class, police, but also the politicians who direct them, denying your own rights in the process, whether out of racism or authoritarianism or both. Even if Taylor were guilty of any of the charges people are throwing at her to avoid questioning their own beliefs, the notion that the government has the right to dictate what people put in their own bodies and basing your own morality off what they decide, alcohol and pills good, plants and fungi grown in the earth bad, is an indictment of your own understanding of the freedom you claim to cherish. This is to say nothing of the overwhelming failure that is the war on drugs, which has led to more sacrifices of your liberty than any rioters or looters out in the street. At the same time you worship these order followers, you're empowering the very people who will take your guns when the politicians they defend tell them to. Because whatever power you let the state seize to serve your own anti-freedom interests will eventually come back to control you too. But this is too hard to recognize after generations of authoritarian programming deeming the government legitimate and training people to believe that government agents have rights we don't. And many of you now consequently embrace a murderous double standard. If anyone else had broken into the home, Walker would have been justified in shooting at them, but because it's a government agent working for politicians, he's not. But I'm yet to hear anyone defending these officers explain how agents of a government allegedly empowered by the will and consent of the people and who serve the people obtain rights, like killing and breaking and entering, the people themselves do not have. But it is all right. Everything is all right. The struggle is finished. You have won the victory over yourself. You love Big Brother.